Good evening, everyone. So here I was, listening away to CNN leaks, when all of a sudden I came across some more SJW craziness that's interrupting me from other SJW craziness. Why I Won't Let Any Male Babysit My Children by Casey Edwards at the Sydney Morning Herald. She quite rightly predicts she's going to get backlash for this as being a man-hater. I'm actually going to give her backlash for being an idiot, and I'll come to that in a little bit. Casey starts off her article by saying, "When our first daughter was born, my husband and I made a family rule. No man would ever babysit our children. No exceptions." Well, that's going to be awkward for your husband to babysit your children then. Well, maybe he's not a man. Is he demi-gendered? Does he transition at will? What does that mean exactly? Does that mean just somebody with a penis? Or is it somebody who self-identifies as a man? I don't understand how social justice warriors work these days. This includes male relatives and friends and even extracurricular and holiday programs such as basketball camp where men can have unrestricted, unsupervised access to children. So anywhere. Anywhere. Like, where is this not a thing? Are they allowed to be with male teachers? What if they don't identify? What about trans women? I don't understand this. This is the weirdest bubble I've ever seen. This is an actual sexist bubble. I mean, this is a thing they do in Islam. I mean, maybe this is why we've got so many white women in Western countries that are converting to Islam. Maybe they're just so used to being segregated away from men that they have to forcibly be segregated away from men now. Unbelievable. So she's saying she has a new daughter now, 8 years after her first daughter. And they're going to continue being completely bigoted against men because they think it's keeping their daughters safe. So no group slumber parties. Nope, that's not fun. Nope, no fun for daughters. When her daughter goes out on play dates, she makes sure that there's at least one woman around at all times, which is good. Can't have those women actually doing real work. Keep that wage gap up, ladies. And then she complains about how hard it is. So as you can imagine, this is not an easy conversation to have. To her friends' credit, they've respected her family policy even though her friends don't have the same rules. Because they're not crazy. Oh, man. Would I prefer to be a more chilled out parent? Absolutely. Will I change my family policy? Unfortunately, no. Child sexual abuse is so prevalent that I won't back down. So, my question here, and where I start getting into the idiocy of this article and her way of thinking, is the data she goes into right now when she starts talking about this. According to the Australian Institute of Family Studies, the prevalence of child sexual abuse is 1.4 to 8% for penetrative abuse and 5.7 to 16% for non-penetrative abuse for boys, and 4 to 12% for penetrative abuse, and 13.9 to 36% for non-penetrative abuse for girls. Now, this is her contextualizing this particular fact, which isn't even a fact. It's a study. It's a few different studies, and I'll go over in a second. So to put these figures in context, the best case scenario that she thinks she's seeing is that 1 in 20 boys are sexually abused, and the worst case is that 1 in 3 girls are. Now, when they say sexual abuse in these studies, if you actually go to this study from the Australian government, Australian Institute of Family Studies, who are already biased, like they have to report high levels of this to keep their jobs. The worse of a problem this is going to be, the more job they have to do, the more money they're going to get. So keeping these as significant seeming as possible are always going to be their agenda. They really don't care that much at the end of the day about what the numbers say. They probably do actually care about the kids, I would say, but they want the numbers to appear high. But even in their conclusions, it's really not. So you have the charts here. When you scroll down, you've got key one she focuses on. You see all these charts. The charts going down is the 5th one down, how many children are sexually. And in this, there's a total of 5 studies, the last one in 2010. Now, they're not all covering all children. Some of them are female only, some of them are men and women, and the rates are looking at specific age groups. So some of them are testing people that are 51 to 62 years old. The Dunn-Purdy, Cook, Boyle, and Najm study from 2003 is a total of 1,600 adults from ages 18 to 59, 876 men, 908 women, and I'm sure the groupings that they're getting here are semi-representative, right? But the numbers are so varied that when you go to the conclusion, even in the conclusion it says, this paper has reviewed recent studies that have estimated the prevalence of child abuse and neglect in Australia and explained some of the reasons why the estimates can vary so significantly. Measuring the extent of child maltreatment is not easy. Definitions of abuse and neglect differ from study to study, and sometimes by extreme amounts. So in some of them, say you get spanked on the ass, some of them consider that sexual abuse. And I'm not joking. So some of them are including things like that. There's also a considerable practical and ethical difficulties involved in measurement of maltreatment, which can influence prevalence estimates. For example, the sensitive nature of the topic may deter some people from participating in research or necessitate therapeutic support after disclosure of maltreatment is made. What they're saying is, look, we don't even know how many of these people are even going to give us proper information on what happened. Some of them might not even know. And some of them may, like, on both sides, some of them might be making things up, some of them might not know, some of them might have grudges. They just don't have a way of getting actual accurate data on this. And even they can't explain it, so they say, look, despite the difficulties involved in measuring the extent of child maltreatment, some findings emerge unequivocally from this view. But the only thing that they say is unequivocal is all 5 types of child maltreatment occur at significant levels in the Australian community. That's all they want. All they want is that last line that says all 5 types of child maltreatment occur at significant levels in the Australian community. They don't want children to be harmed, but they want those numbers to appear high so that they warrant their job. Now, a more practical solution to this would be to get to know the people that your children are going to interact with, but she straight up says, no, I'm not going to do that, based on statistics that are completely flawed, and only looking at sexual abuse. I'm going to ban my girls from hanging around with men alone, which is completely insane. But as she says, children are far greater risk from relatives, siblings, friends, and other adults such as priests, teachers, and coaches. She goes on, the blanket rule against allowing our daughters to be in the care of lone male adults means that we do not have to make a moral assessment of every man, but you do have to make a moral assessment of every woman, because, and we'll go to Google for this, women abuse children more than men in the search. Answer from Google, true. Men are historically more likely to commit violent crimes, but child abuse comes in many forms: physical, sexual, emotional, and neglectful, and in the majority of child abuse cases, 78%, drumroll, the victims suffer from neglect, which women are more likely to commit. So, what does that mean? That means that in forms of abuse that are reported, 78% of those are neglect, and perpetrators of neglect are women. She continues on, dismissing this as hysterical reaction of a misandrist is not only incorrect, it's also missing the point spectacular. My husband and my decision is based on straightforward risk analysis, a cold, hard, unemotional reading of statistical data. While you and your husband are terrible at reading statistical data, because if you actually looked at it, what you would have seen is, oh, the data varies so wildly that I probably shouldn't worry about it, other than doing due diligence in specific individuals I meet and trying to be a good parent myself. Because, as you were reading, if you're a good parent, it's usually not too much of an issue, and women actually neglect kids more than men. So, are you scanning the women that you're leaving your kids with? How do you know that they're not being neglected there? Are you doing that work? Why would you only do that work for women? That's insane. Unbelievable. I mean, will you not allow them to be around Muslims? Will you not allow them to be around Jewish people? What are the borders of this? Some would say that this is extreme, but I also know that sexual abuse can rob a child of their self-worth and dignity in an instant, and it takes decades for those wounds to heal, if at all. So what? How are you protecting against the 2% that it could be from a female perpetrator? If you're not going to even get to know people, then in this context, potentially hurting people's feelings is the price my husband and I are prepared to pay. It doesn't hurt my feelings. I just point and laugh at you. And I feel really bad for your daughters, because quite frankly, they're going to grow up thinking that men are evil. And that's insane. If you want your daughters to be social jacks, then yes, good job. But I'm not, my feelings aren't hurt. You just look like an idiot. Oh well, that's what happens when you go social justice.